10 heartbreaking cases involving the right to die. Welcome to Creepshow, your ultimate destination for the most chilling and thought-provoking tales. Today, we delve into one of the most controversial and emotionally charged topics of our time, the right to die. In this episode, we'll explore 10 heartbreaking cases where individuals faced unimaginable pain and suffering, and the agonizing decisions they made in their pursuit of dignity and peace. Prepare yourselves for a journey through the shadows of human experience, where the fight for life meets the desire for a dignified death. There is a strong opposition between the human spirit of fighting and attempting to survive and the practice of euthanasia. On the other hand, some individuals opt for this course of action for themselves or their loved ones because they believe that the ability to die with dignity, with as little pain and suffering as possible, ought to be a fundamental human right. At this time, the only countries that have legalized euthanasia are the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. On the other hand, assisted suicide is legal in Albania, Colombia, Germany, Japan, and Switzerland, as well as in 5 states in the United States: Montana, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. On the other hand, several nations and states are investigating the possibility of legalizing such practices. Number 10. The Maynard Brittany. The news that Brittany Maynard was going to pass away came to her when she was 29 years old. She was given a diagnosis of a malignant brain tumor in April of 2014, which was expected to take her life within the next 6 months. It could not be solved. She had the ability to extend her life by receiving complete radiation therapy, but she would suffer a horrible death while everyone around her saw her degenerate for the duration of her life. In no way did Brittany intend to proceed in this manner. They had been married for a year when she decided that she wanted to start a family. On the other hand, death is unavoidable, and Brittany's passing occurred much sooner than anyone would have wished on their own. Consequently, after considering the likelihood of a gradual death that would be accompanied by severe headaches, seizures, and memory loss, she made the decision to relocate from California to Oregon, a state in which assisted suicide is authorized. Brittany was able to cross off all of the items on her bucket list, which included journeying to Yellowstone National Park in Alaska, thanks to the financial support she received from contributions. Her trip to the Grand Canyon, which she fulfilled on October 21st, was the final item on her list of things to do. In her home in Portland, Brittany passed away on November 1st, 2 days after the birthday of her husband. She was surrounded by her loved ones at the time of her passing. Maynard's decision, as well as assisted suicide in general, was met with vehement opposition from several religious organizations, most notably the Catholic Church. Another official referred to it as absurd. Other detractors argue that she made her decision in an excessively quick manner. As Brittany pointed out, however, she was not showing any signs of improvement. So, when exactly is the appropriate time to pass away? Number 9. Bernard Heginbotham. It had been 67 blissful years since Bernard and Ida Heginbotham had tied the knot by the year 2004. In total, the couple was blessed with 6 kids, with his wife, who was 87 years old and suffering from illness. Bernard, who was 100 years old, had been providing care for her for some time. As her health continued to deteriorate, Ida was moved from one nursing home to another after she experienced a number of falls. Bernard continued to provide his wife with as much assistance as he could and made it a point to visit her on a daily basis. It was in April of 2004 when Bernard received a phone call from his eldest son, who informed him that Ida would have to be relocated to yet another residence. For this reason, on April 14, 2004, Bernard, who was a retired butcher and a devout member of the religious community, stole a knife from the house that the couple lived in. To get to his house, he walked. Her throat was slit by him while the elderly couple was sitting in Ida's chamber by themselves. After leaving the house, he made an attempt to take his own life. As a result, he was taken into custody. After being charged with murder, Bernard became the oldest person in the history of England to be charged with the crime of murder during that time period. The judge sentenced him to 1 year of probation after he entered a guilty plea to the charge of manslaughter on the basis of reduced culpability. Number 8. Danny Bond. It was in Southampton, England, where Danny Bond was born 12 weeks prematurely. A fight against disease that would last a lifetime began at that moment. He got an infection in the lining of his colon while he was still being treated in the hospital's special hospital unit for infants. It wasn't until he was 11 years old that anyone realized whatever the issue was. Bond was never able to leave the hospital for more than a few months at a time due to the condition that he was suffering from. Only 2 of his birthdays and 2 of his Christmases were celebrated at home by him. Over the course of his 20 years, he underwent more than 300 surgical procedures and endured pain on a nearly daily basis. It was when he was 13 years old that he first began to express his desire to end his life. On 2 separate occasions, he attempted to end his life by himself, but his mother was able to save him both times. Upon reaching the age of 21, Danny was admitted to the hospital due to his deteriorating health. It was this time that he made the decision that he would not be leaving. All of a sudden, his existence had become a burden. However, the only way that Bond could legally end his life while he was treated in the hospital was to starve himself to death. His mother and stepfather, contrary to the desires of the medical professionals, saw him slowly pass away over the period of several days. He passed away in July of 2002 when he was 21 years old. Number 7. Godelieve de Troyer. Belgium, which has some of the most democratic regulations regarding euthanasia in the world, is the location of a significant number of notable euthanasia cases. For instance, a person does not need to be suffering from a terminal illness in order to be eligible for euthanasia, and there is no minimum age requirement. The death of Godelieve de Troyer, who was 64 years old and suffering from severe depression, was one of the incidents that generated the most controversy. De Troyer reached out to her son Tom Mortier, whom she had been separated from for some time, and informed him that she had contacted authorities about the possibility of being euthanized. Despite the fact that Mortier was aware that euthanasia was constitutionally permissible, he did not give it any thought because he believed that his mother would not be eligible for assisted suicide because she did not suffer from any physical illness. During the month of April, he received a message instructing him to phone his wife. It came as a complete surprise to him when she informed him that his mother had been put to sleep the day before, and that he was responsible for picking up her body. As a result of the rules governing disclosure, Mortier had not been informed concerning the suicide in advance. Ever since the passing of his mother, Mortier has been a staunch and outspoken opponent of the legalization of euthanasia. Number 6. The twins of Belgium. People who are deaf are dependent on their vision for almost everything, which makes vision an even more crucial aspect of their lives. However, in 2013, 2 identical twins in Belgium who were 45 years old were confronted with the reality of turning blind after having already been deaf. After being forced to endure that, the twins made the decision to take their own lives. Because they were not ill or experiencing any discomfort, the case was considered exceptional at the time. They simply did not want to be confronted with such a terrible destiny. On the 14th of December 2013, they shared a cup of coffee together and then thanked their brother and their parents for their support. After that, they went into their own rooms, gave each other a passing wave, and then went to sleep in a calm and peaceful manner. Number 5. Chantal Sibir. Chantal Sibir was a mother of 3. She had retired from teaching and resided in Plombières-les-Dijon, which is located in France. Esthesioneuroblastoma is an extremely uncommon kind of cancer that affects the nasal cavity. She was diagnosed with this disease in the year 2000. The cancer spreads across the face, leaving victims with a disfigured appearance. They are also rendered blind, and they lose their ability to smell or taste as a result of this. The individual ultimately succumbs to death as a result of the cancer's invasion of the brain. Sibir was aware that the illness would eventually take her life in a manner that was both excruciatingly painful and disgusting, and she was unable to even venturing out into public because of this knowledge. The extent of her deformities was so severe that people stared at her, and children fled in terror. Her request for assistance with suicide was submitted to the French court in the year 2008. She was not allowed to participate. In 2005, France established a rule that said that it had the authority to refuse care to a patient who was suffering from a terminal illness. However, a physician was not permitted to take part in the patient's death. The right to receive aid in her dying was taken away from her on March 17th. After 2 days, her body was discovered inside of her residence. It had been 2 days since she had passed away, and the cause of death was an overdose of pentobarbital, which is not carried in pharmacies in France. In order to carry out euthanasia, the medication is utilized in the countries of Switzerland, Belgium, and the state of Oregon in the United States. Number 4. Frank van den Bleeken. A prison in Belgium has been Frank van den Bleeken's home for the past 3 decades. He has a long history of sexual assaults, and in 1989, he was responsible for the murder of a lady who was 19 years old. Despite the fact that he was freed from prison after serving 7 years, he proceeded to assault 3 further victims within a matter of 3 weeks. One of them was a girl who was 11 years old. As a result of those offenses, he was given an indeterminate sentence, and he is aware that he will never be released. He considers himself to be a threat to the community. Even though he has requested therapy, he asserts that he has never been provided with sufficient care. It is interesting to note that Belgium abolished the death penalty in 1996, but in 2002, they established a law allowing euthanasia that does not require the affected individual to be suffering from a terminal illness. Van den Bleeken submitted his application for the right to die in the year 2011. The experience of being incarcerated, according to him, was unbearable psychological suffering. In the middle of September 2014, Van den Bleeken was given his wish and was permitted to pass away through the process of euthanasia. At the time that this article is being written, he has not yet been put to sleep, despite the fact that he has stated that he anticipates passing away at any moment. Furthermore, the case of Van den Bleeken was the first of its kind in Belgium, and it set the way for 15 other criminals who are also appealing for their own deaths. Number 3, Tracy Latimer. While Tracy Latimer was being born on November 23, 1980, close to her house in Wilkie, Saskatchewan, there was a disruption in the flow of oxygen to her brain. As a result, she was born with severe cerebral palsy following this event. The functional development of her was limited to the level that is typical for newborns who are 3 months old. It was difficult for her to walk or communicate, and she was not very receptive, despite the fact that she enjoyed being affectionate. Her smile was the only thing she did, and it was only on rare occasions. In addition to that, Tracy was in a state of continual unease. Several surgical procedures were carried out on her recently. Tracy was scheduled to undergo surgery to have one of her thigh bones removed when she was just a few days away from being 13 years old. Robert Latimer, her father, was sick and weary of witnessing his child make such a miserable situation. Robert placed Tracy inside the cab of his truck on October 24, 1993, while his wife and 3 other children were attending church. He then connected a hose to the exhaust pipe of the truck. He was able to observe Tracy's death from carbon monoxide poisoning through the back window of the vehicle. After that, he had her body placed in her bed. As a result of the investigation conducted by the police, Robert admitted to having killed his daughter. He was accused with murder in the 1st degree, but he was ultimately found guilty of murder in the 2nd degree and sentenced to 10 years in prison. 2011 was the year when he was freed on parole. In 2011, when asked if he regrets what he did, he responded that he would not change his actions if he could go back in time, with the exception of taking his pregnant wife to a different establishment. Number 2, Terry Schiavo. Terry Schiavo, who was 26 years old at the time, passed out in the hallway of the apartment that she and her husband, Michael Schiavo, shared until the afternoon of February 25, 1990. Despite the fact that it is unknown what caused her to lose consciousness, her potassium levels were significantly lower than usual. When she was unconscious, her brain did not receive the adequate amount of oxygen it needed. She was able to breathe on her own, despite the fact that the physicians were able to bring her back to life. According to the medics, she did not have any ideas or feelings. Although her body was still alive, everything else had been destroyed. In the year 1998, Michael suggested that the feeding tube should be removed. This is the course of action that she would have sought. Instead, her parents, Robert and Mary Schindler, stated that she would have wanted to continue receiving nourishment through the feeding tube because they believed that she might emerge from her persistent vegetative state without any assistance. For the subsequent 7 years, Terry's parents and husband engaged in a contentious dispute regarding her life. Courts ruled in favor of Michael, but Terry's parents filed an appeal, which resulted in the extension of her life. In the most recent appeal, which took place in 2005, there were a total of 5 doctors who testified. 2 of them were picked by Michael, 2 were chosen by the Schindlers, and 1 was chosen by the court. According to the Schindlers' medical professionals, there was a possibility that she could come to. They all agreed that there was no possibility of survival and that Terry would remain in a coma until the moment she passed away. At the beginning of 2005, When the final appeal was unsuccessful, the case became widely reported throughout the world. Every single person, from President Bush to South Park, had something to say about the matter. On March 18, 2005, the feeding tube was removed, and Terry passed away on March 31, 2005, just under 2 weeks after the removal of the tube. An autopsy performed after her death revealed that the damage to her brain had been irreversible, and that she would not have been able to regain consciousness. Number 1. Ramon Sampedro. In August of 1968, Ramon Sampedro had reached the age of 25 decades. It was a day when he dove into a small portion of the ocean close to his house in the Galicia region of Spain. He was a fisherman and was about to get married. After the dive, his back was broken, and he became paralyzed from the neck down. Sampedro remained in bed until 1993, when he made the decision that he was prepared to pass away. As he viewed himself as a living head on a dead body, and he believed his infliction to be a type of slavery. The fact that he was paralyzed prevented him from ending his life in a dignified and peaceful manner, despite the fact that he would have done so if he had been able to. In addition, he was unable to locate anyone who could aid him in taking his own life, because assisted suicide was against the law in Spain and carried a jail sentence of 20 years. The issue was that Sampedro was so brimming with life that he was both motivating and an inspiration. His dedication to the cause he was fighting for was unwavering. He read works by Oscar Wilde and Franz Kafka, and he would write poetry. Through the use of a pen in his mouth, he began writing letters to officials of the Spanish government. The collection of all of his letters was published in a book that was given the title, Letters from Hell. The fact that he was a man who was both vibrant and articulate made it even more difficult to grant him his want to depart this world. In spite of the fact that he was unsuccessful in his legal battle, Sampedro took his own life on January 12, 1998, with the assistance of an individual who remains unknown. When I drink this, I will have renounced the most humiliating of slaveries, being a live head stuck to a dead body, he added. I will have renounced both of these things. Following that, he drank water that had been laced with cyanide through a straw. Sampedro was a quadriplegic for 29 of those years in his life, and he finally received his dream and passed away quietly at the age of 55. It was a tremendous deal in Spain, and it became much more significant when a segment from Sampedro's suicide video, which lasted for 50 minutes, was broadcast on a Spanish news program. Despite the fact that it did not show Sampedro actually dying, it did show him drinking the water that ultimately contributed to his death. The life of Sampedro served as the inspiration for the film The Sea Inside, which was nominated for an Academy Award and starred Javier Bardem. Thank you for joining us on this heart-wrenching journey through the right to die. These stories remind us of the complexities and profound emotions involved in the end-of-life decisions. If you found this episode thought-provoking, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Creepshow for more chilling stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the shadows are always watching.